It always seems impossible until it's done. Distinguished guests, it's an honor to be part of your celebration of diversity and to pay tribute to a great son of Africa, Nelson Mandela. In 1964, the year Nelson Mandela was sentenced to life in prison, few imagined that a movement would be built that would defeat apartheid. It was a system kept in place by a ruthless and brutal regime. Yet, 30 years later, Nelson Mandela was sworn in as the first president of a non-racial, free South Africa. It seemed impossible, but it started with standing up and saying no to injustice. The South African people, with the rest of Africa and the global community, defeated this crime against humanity. I'm proud to say that Oxfam was part of that history in South Africa, a small part. We were one of just 2 civil society organizations invited to attend Mandela's inauguration, a recognition of our work for justice and equality. Oxfam, the organization I work for, was built by people standing up for justice. In 1942, in the middle of the Second World War, almost all of Europe was occupied. In Greece, cut off by a blockade, people were dying of starvation in their thousands. Then, in Oxford, a small group of activists came together to form the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief. Together with other committees across the UK, they campaigned to get food to those starving people in Greece and across the enemy lines. That was the start of Oxfam, more than 70 years ago. Standing in solidarity with poor women and men, taking on the world's most powerful, and campaigning for what is right, that's what we do at Oxfam. I'll give you an example. Until last year, there was no international law to control the irresponsible trade of arms. These guns, tanks, combat aircraft, and warships destroy so many lives around the world every day. I have seen firsthand the terrible human suffering that small and light weapons can inflict. I've seen that in my life. But last year, history was made when the Arms Trade Treaty was passed by an overwhelming vote at the United Nations. This victory didn't come easily. It took 10 years of hard campaigning by tens of thousands of Oxfam supporters. They met with their government officials, they worked relentlessly to build public support, and refused to give in to doubters. There were many doubters. We stood up for what is right. We mobilized. And now, lives will be saved because there's an international law and it can be enforced. There have been many changes in the world in the last few decades. Poverty has declined in every region, even in my region where I come from, Africa. Many developing countries have been growing at an unprecedented speed, and life-changing technologies have improved human well-being. But even so, there are still millions of people who are not part of this success story. It's a fact that the 85 richest people in the world own the wealth of half of the world's population. Think about it. That's 3.5 billion people owning as much as a group small enough to fit into a London double-decker bus. Think about it. Extreme concentrations of wealth are not only morally questionable, they are dangerous. They are dangerous. Exclusion and discrimination creates deep social problems, especially these days, youth unemployment. Inequality denies people their dignity and their voice. It keeps poor people poor and powerless. It's also proven now that inequality weakens economic growth, so it's bad economics. Here in the UK, the gap between the richest and the poorest is at a degree last seen in the 1920s, the Great Depression. This country is the 6th richest in the world. But austerity measures and welfare cuts have worsened poverty and deepened inequality. We are seeing record numbers of people turning to food banks in this country, the 6th richest in the world. Is this morally defensible? Is it sustainable? If we look at these problems as problems beyond our power to make a difference on, we will feel defeated. But if we break things down to their causes and join others in collective action, we can solve them. Poverty and extreme inequality are not inevitable. There are clear examples where the gap between rich and poor has been narrowed. In the United States and in Europe here, in the 3 decades after the Second World War, and in Latin America in the last decade, this gap was reduced, and these countries prospered. So how can it be done? We need goals for ending extreme inequality in every country. We need to regulate markets to promote growth that is sustainable and equitable. We need to crack down on the financial secrecy and tax dodging by companies that drain trillions of dollars out of poor countries and into tax havens. This is money that should be going to crucial public services to serve the poor, to lift the poor out of poverty. We need investment in good quality health care and education for all people. We need decent jobs and decent wages, especially for young people. And we need to remove the barriers to equal rights and opportunities for women. Many in this country, and many of us here tonight, trace our origins in the South, in the developing South. We know what it means to struggle for opportunity. I came to this country as a refugee when I was 17 years old. I was fleeing the brutal regime of Idi Amin in Uganda. When I arrived in this country, I needed an opportunity, and this country gave me one. I was given asylum, I got a scholarship, and I earned 2 university degrees here in this country. That was my start. And now, here I am, leading such a respected organization which works to fight poverty and injustice around the world. every day I wake up, I stand on the shoulders of giants who founded this organization to fight poverty around the world. I'm so grateful for the social policies of this country at that time that allowed a young African refugee like myself to thrive. These are the policies that reduce inequality by spreading opportunity for all. But I was also here when I saw them being reversed by a very right-wing conservative government. I will not go into that. These are the policies that we at Oxford fight for daily all around the world. So be part of the movement for social justice. That's what Nelson Mandela is saying to us. When confronted with an injustice that seems too immense to overcome, remember the words of Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. I invite you tonight to step up and join collective action. You can do nothing on your own. Join us in our campaign to fix global tax laws. We are chasing these tax dodgers, and we want to close those tax havens in Isle of Wight and wherever. Let us demand that governments invest in universal quality education and health care. Join us to pile pressure on companies that use child labor, that forcibly evict people from their land, or that waste precious water resources. Oxfam's vision is a just world without poverty, a world in which all human beings are valued and treated equally. With individual will, starts with one, and collective action, joining others, this new world is within reach. It is possible. Nelson Mandela taught us that no matter how insurmountable an obstacle seems, with willpower and mobilizing to stand together, we can change the world. Thank you.